Yeah, they see the drive-through going by, usually if they're heading towards El Dorado, so but they're coming from over from Louisville.
What are their plans? What is the one Golden Point's closed?
That was a rumor.
Yeah.
That got circulated for some reason.
Yeah, it was never, they were never, are they the same owner, or?
I have no idea. I remember the rumor got so bad though that they addressed it during a board meeting.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Because they were
that's.
like, guys, everybody please stop spreading this.
Yeah, what I heard was the Rangers should take their space over.
Yep, that was what was said. I remember going around on the website and CAC line. Yeah. Next few more minutes. I think Tracy won't be here, but she's the only person I know who won't be able to make it tonight. Sarah, Sean.
So they must not be the same thing. Because some franchises say within a certain amount, you have to get a same owner so that they're
And
not.
Starbucks, it's like 12 feet.
Okay.
They're on every corner.
Yeah.
All right, so we can go ahead and call this OSAC meeting to order for May 10th, 2017. Just to start off, we'll kind of go down the line and make sure everyone introduces themselves, and then we'll get started. So, Ken Lish, OSAC Chair. Should we go that way?
I'm Sarah Lyman.
Andy Quad, member.
Joel White, member.
Tricia Dunham, Vice Chair.
Ryan Welch, member.
Mark Leases, Town Board Liaison.
Allison James, Staff Liaison.
Excellent, and hopefully we'll have our missing members show up in the next few minutes. So we'll start with public comment. Youth leadership, if you guys want to come up and
Should we say our names?
yeah, please go ahead and you just say your name, area that you live, and go ahead and talk about whatever you like.
Okay. So my name is Cassin Chan, and I live near El Dorado on Torreys Peak.
My name is Soha Kadem. I live on Jerosa Lane, right near Superior Elementary.
So we wanted to present an idea to OSAC, and we were thinking for National Trails Day this year, we want to offer up a craft to the public. So we were debating between pots and like wildflower seeds for them to bring home, and bird feeders. And we, at our last meeting, we were leaning more towards the flower pots because they're more convenient. But that's what we were thinking about doing.
As a group, we all decided the flower pots just because it could get messy with the peanut butter. There could be allergies and stuff. With the soil, we were planning to put it in a big bucket so they wouldn't have to like try to take it out of the bag directly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be, in general, more. Also, it would be better than trying to get a whole group game because everyone can do it at their own time. That was just what we were thinking of at the last meeting. So, any questions?
Are you doing similar in years past? It was like a coffee-size cup pot.
Yeah.
Are you thinking that, or are you thinking bigger this time around?
So we did a flower pot sort of thing at Arbor Day. I think it was last year or the year before. And we're either going to use like about that size of cup or bigger, like a little bit bigger. So, yeah.
And you guys are going to provide the seeds too?
Yes.
Did you have? Okay. Do you have an idea of what kind? Like, or is it just going to be a mix of flowers?
I think it could be a mix. We haven't really
a mix
decided
of
yet.
like Colorado wildflowers.
Nice. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I think it's a great idea, and I think making it so people can come and go rather than having to do it at a set time makes a lot of sense. While you guys are looking at seeds, one thing that might be worth considering is focusing on seeds that are bee friendly, since we're having bee extinction issues. So anything that you can go that direction, I think would be totally appreciated. But yeah, I love the idea.
I think that they're also going to be doing the passport program stamping this year.
Oh,
Ah.
fabulous.
Excellent. Get a
Love
lot of
those
people that way.
maps. Do we have extra, did they reorder more of the passports?
They're being formulated right now because they're going to change, you know, they kind of evolve and change as the years go by. So they should be ready for National Trails Day.
Excellent.
Great. Well, thank you guys.
Okay, thank
Thanks so
you.
much. We'll see you on National Trails Day then.
Yeah.
And please let us know if you have like any questions or.
We definitely will. And if you guys have any questions about the day or anything, feel free to reach out to any of us, and we'll make sure to get answers to you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Hi. I'm Susan Bauer. I live at 1770 Morrison Court. And in December, I stood before you and thanked you for the full restoration of the Hodgson Harris Reservoir. And I mentioned that we had learned that I got involved with the county aquatic waterfowl monitoring program, and that we had learned that there's a lot more variety and bird species out there than anticipated. So since January, I've been just speaking to other groups such as I'm sorry, I'm tired tonight. There's POSAC and PROSTAC, I believe, and then you folks, obviously OSAC, and then there's the town trustees. I've also reached out of curiosity because I don't know what an asset we have out there. I just know it's special. So I've spoken to like Southern Plains Land Trust. I've reached out to the Boulder County Audubon. And people are excited to hear what we have out there. And so in speaking with Boulder County Audubon, I particularly connected with Steve Jones, former president. And he said, well, you know, it's May. This was actually in April. He said, bird breeding season's coming up. He said, why don't you do a little survey out there and find out what you have? And I said, brilliant. How do I do that? So this past weekend, we, on very short notice, we put together a program to initiate a bird breeding survey. And we were hoping for 6 to 9 people. We had 13 people, not including Steve Jones, in attendance. We had a great turnout. And so we actually, as of today, have 10 people that are assisting with the collection of the data. So I just wanted to come and let you know about this, as people are really excited to observe and catalog what it is we have in our backyard, and on this good asset that, you know, the county and the town has both invested in. And in July, when the study is done, we will put together a report, and I'll come back and present it to you and let you know what we have. And just wanted to make you aware of it because I've downloaded like the Open Space Comprehensive Plan from 2005, and I noticed there was some general assumptions in there about the property, especially the Zaharias property. You know, like, oh, it doesn't have any trees, it's of no value, and it's like, well, it actually has cattails, and that's really good for bird breeding. And actually found we found the address of the property. It's 7500 South 88th Street, so other than Zaharias. So anyways, I just wanted to let you know what I, as a citizen, was just up to, and just to make you aware. So any questions? All right. Thank you.
Susan, what's your timeline again for when the study will be complete?
The study runs May through June, and it might even spill a little bit over into July, but then we will put together a report and present that. Hopefully that'll be pulled together by the end of July. Worst case, early part of August. Yeah. So.
Well, I think that'd be a report we'd love to see if you're willing to share it with us.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
I saw that on the CAC. Unfortunately, I had all soccer this weekend, but I'm really excited that you've taken this on and doing this, because it's one of the things that we were hoping would happen once the reservoir was restored, that a lot of birds would come back. So I'm excited to hear what you end up seeing out there.
Thank you. It'll be exciting to see. I can just tell you, I'm amazed at how excited people are about doing this study. And I'm also, Sunday I was out walking along Shamrock, and I was listening to people on their balconies and people walking along the street observing the wildlife on the reservoir. I was really amazed at the amount of comments and observation that was going on. And I wasn't out there saying what I was doing. I was just eavesdropping. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kelly McCauley, 1950 Shamrock Drive in Saddlebrook. I am a neighbor, and I was here before, and thank you for your service. My question is, I have become obsessed with the birds now. I've seen eagles, pelicans, definitely a lot of birds of prey. And my English is bad, us Saddlebrook, we have access to the pond or the reservoir where the rest of Superior really doesn't. And it's a shame because it is such a good bird viewing, and also other wildlife. Beside prairie dogs and coyotes, it's just amazing what comes through there. I did read the report that was saying it's like a weeded wasteland, the Zaharis property. I'm wondering if it was acquired, if we could, put it back to a natural state, because I'm sure it wasn't always just weeded, and maybe put up, if it was acquired, to put up something so we could get birds of prey to nest there, because we can't build trees that quickly. So we could bring in more birds and more diverse wildlife. Susan's basically covered everything. And it is an amazing, now that the reservoir is fixed, that the amount of wildlife that comes by. And I have been posting on the 007 on Facebook, and people are like, where is this place? I'm like, hey, I saw this today, I saw that. And, I'm like, oh, it's the reservoir, off of 88th, right near Saddlebrook, but people can't get to it because it's private property there. And also, if and when, or hopefully not, they do build there, what about the wildlife, or putting in stipulations for a part that people can enjoy this? And also for a buffer, and a corridor for the wildlife. Like if we build really big there, how's it going to affect the animals, especially the birds that are coming in and out of that area? So I thought that would be hopefully brought into consideration when you're thinking of acquiring open space. And I thank you.
We appreciate your comments. Thank you so much. Okay, well, that is actually a very good segue into our first discussion topic for the evening. This is a Harriers property. So just to give a little bit more background, Susan and I did have some conversations over the past month or so. We were put in touch by Patrick Hammer, the director of the Parks and Rec program here in Superior. And as Susan mentioned, she'd been reaching out to several different partners, the Land Trust, the Audubon Society, and I think in speaking in her words and what we've heard in others, that there is a desire for Zaharias to be acquired, or for there to be some type of open space. So really, I've got this on our radar tonight just because we're getting more and more interest from the community on it, and I want to make sure everyone was aware of the conversation that I've been having throughout the month. What I had basically relayed to Susan, and Susan, please correct me if I misconstrue anything, but if there does become greater interest from other partners, whether it's any land trusts or others, if there's anything that having a committee start to help out with or anything like that, we would certainly be interested in listening to it and, in all likelihood, probably helping out in any way we can, because we're always about trying to add and conserve as much open space as we can in the town. So that's basically where we've left it. There's nothing to commit to yet, but it's something that's on our radar. I think that's probably a good summation. Is there anything that I might have left out?
Should I go to the...
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
I'm not sure, are we being recorded?
We are.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I think that's a good summation. I reached out to you because I wanted you to be aware of what I was doing so that I didn't blindside or broadside anyone. I just figure I don't have a solution in mind. I'm just starting the conversation because I think as you gather information, and hence the importance of this breed birding survey, it will help us. It'll help identify the next step in the process. You know, do we have something that's out there that's special or not? And so I don't want to presume anything at this point, but I just want you to be aware. And I realize we're all overcommitted and in many ways and overtaxed in many ways. And so when we can help each other gather information, it's just usually an asset. And so I'm just wanting you to be aware of what I'm doing and certainly facilitating the conversation. Is there interest out there? And if there is interest, I have assured Ken I will bring it straight to him. So, okay.
Perfect.
So during Arbor Day, I had several residents, I don't know, 4 or 5, also mention the Zaharis property for either a manicured park or other things like that, but the sentiment of not really wanting to see that built out, but for it to remain an asset to the town with the reservoir and being able to do that. And then, like I said, possibly other parklands or fields or skate park or things like to that nature. So some, but not really, people that came and talked weren't really looking for it to be built out for apartments or things like that. So,
Excellent.
for what?
I have one thing to add really quickly, just in case the committee wasn't aware that the cost of that parcel has been somewhere between $6 and $7 million.
How does that compare to the other parcels that are available?
I think that the Richmond 15 was bought for 1.5.
Yeah, it's high.
Very
Yeah.
expensive.
It's generally been a high amount.
Yeah, and I
outside of what the town has been willing to pay in the past.
And that's typically been the biggest obstruction to us wanting to move forward with any purchase of it thus far, because it has been on the market for quite some time, but it's always been very, very cost prohibitive.
What's the total amount? Is it 26 acres?
28 is what I saw on the slide.
23 point. It was 23.47.
It was about 23.5. If you break that down, it's about between 290 and 300,000 per acre. So that's a high amount.
Yeah.
Price for development.
By the way, Sean Samuelson member. I'm late.
Okay, so I think. Yeah, please.
Sorry. Kelly McCauley again. If that property is sold, and do you guys have any input in how it can be built on? Because with like the waterway for the water to get to the reservoir on the one side, and on the other all this marshland, like who determines what actual part of that 20 some odd acres can be built on?
So
With like easements, like from the road and from all the others.
the official answer to that is, I think it's 35% of the property needs to remain as undeveloped / open space. It's not open space in the sense of being like natural open space, but there has to be at least 35% of the land that's not developed on. However, as the process starts at the very beginning, it starts with a concept plan that gets brought
Right.
forward. That's something that we keep our eye on a regular basis for not just that property, but all properties.
Right.
And we always come and if we see opportunities for open space, we bring it up and we talk to it and say, we'd love to see some additional open space on this part of the property, that part of the property. Trail connections would be great here or there. So it's something that we always put in the developer's ear and hopefully the trustees' ears as well, who can help guide it. But I think ultimately the developer is the one who gets to decide how the property is used.
But is it mandatory that they have to have 35% or?
It's
I believe so. I think that's in the land use code. I'll just add to what Ken said. It's all subject to what it's zoned for.
Yeah.
Right.
So right now, it's zoned for essentially like what would originally they were contemplating it would be an interchange off of 36 would
Right.
be over there. So it's zoned for like hotels and gas stations
Mhm.
and a fairly high intensity commercial use.
Hence the price.
Right. But there's no interchange there, which has kind of changed the calculus of
Right.
what they would put there. So what the developer did back at the tail end of last year was they came to the board with a concept plan, which would necessitate a change in the zoning to actually build what they wanted to build.
Right. But has any assessment been done on the property to say what's wetlands and what's, because there is a lot of gullies and stuff, and I'm just wondering if there's any law or anything on the books about, disturbing that, or can they just flat bulldoze it all? And
Well, the last time we did a study as a town, I think, was in 2005, and that
Right.
was probably in what you read.
Yeah, and it was kind of.
Mark, I don't know of any other.
Are we up for a new study for all the open space or
We're
around
actually
us?
discussing that tonight.
Yeah.
I
Quite a few years
don't know
ago.
the answer to
Okay.
your question about what obligations they'd have, like if there's anything that would prevent them from backfilling in the pond.
I don't think they would be able to do. I
Yeah.
guess we should reach out to Boulder County, because Boulder County assisted in the restore, so I wonder what they would say about, I don't know that they would let anybody fill that in, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because, I don't know if there's a pipe or if it just comes along the waterway to restock our reservoir. And
Allison, can we reach out to Boulder?
and then also along the highway is all different, dips and, marshland and, or, cattails, so.
Well, and I think at this point in time, there's not a whole lot going on. The concept plans were brought forward, weren't pushed
Right.
to the next step.
Right.
So,
Okay.
as far as I know, nothing is currently being proposed. But it's something we'll certainly be keeping our eye on.
Yeah, no, that I know. I was just wondering
Yeah.
if there was, yes, you can build, like if there's a pond, if there was a pond there, could they bulldoze the pond under and build houses?
Not the reservoir, but.
Well, I know not
they
the
can-
reservoir, but I didn't know if there's like laws and stuff. I guess I should look into that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Come back and report and tell us what you find.
All right, so unless anyone has other questions, comments about Zaharia specifically, we can transition into actually talking about the open space evaluations that we did. Allison, can we bring up the rankings? And Joel, you want to knock the lights down? Yep.
Is my vision getting better or is that blurry?
Sometimes it gets stuck in our system. It shows as read-only. You can resave it if you like.
I think we're all right.
I don't know. My vision might be as bad.
Yeah, sure.
No,
We'll make this bigger. Enable editing. Okay, so just to recap where we're at, we've taken about 2 months for everyone to go out and look at each of these properties. Everybody submitted their rankings from 1 to 8 to me. over the past few days. I've put them up into the spreadsheet. I totaled all of the numbers just going across, divided by the number of people who submitted. So I took that total divided by the number of people who submitted for that property, so dividing by 8 for most of them, to get our average score. The lower the average score, the higher the rank it was for us. And I then just plugged in what the rank actually ended up being, and we have it sorted based off that right now. The only deviation from that is from Tracy. She lives directly adjacent to this property and felt it might be a conflict for her to rank, so she chose not to add a rank to that property. So that one's divided by 7 rather than 8. So with that said, Level 3, Rogers Farm, and Zaharias ended up being our top 3, followed by the Superior 15, Bulljack, the 76th Street properties, Anderson, and the Ridge 2 property. I think it would be useful for us to dig into reasons why we did this. I don't know if anyone has any ideas for exactly how we want to do it. We can either go down the line and have everyone discuss what their rationale was, or we could go property by property and have people kind of throw out what their thoughts were, or maybe the highest ranking for each property and lowest ranking people for each property. Anybody have any preference or care?
I think it might work a little better if we talk property by property.
Yeah.
I agree.
That way, otherwise, we may be burying somebody's comments that, at the very end, that gets a discussion point.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, might as well start from the top of the list and go down. So, Level 3, does anyone want to jump in?
So, first off, Allison, thank you for the map, because that one's always very helpful when you're out and about. By the way, folks, just so you know, the maps are at my house, so if you need them for anything you're doing, call me. But Sarah and I spent a lot of time, again, at Arbor Day, explaining to people that no, the town of Superior did not own all up behind Snowmass and all of these areas. So I think we had a lot more people also say, oh, we don't, and that should be our priority of getting that. Now, I don't know. I'm coming around more to we should try to work with Level 3 or whatever it's coming now, CenturyLink or whatever, to try to see, not go for the whole parcel, but try to see if we can go for any part of it and start to acquire. I don't know if it's worth going for all of that, because I think there's still parts that they would want to build on eventually, but there's a lot that would take a significant amount of money to make it buildable land. So maybe we should try to shift our focus a bit, not look at all of the acreage there, but more parts of it. But definitely, I think, through the last 6-8 months, as, we educate people that no, all of that is not owned by the town, and yes, they allow us to do social trails and be on it, that people do want us to acquire it. I know that we've had, I know that staff is usually in contact with them on a, ongoing, regular kind of schedule. They're not always open to it or seem to have leadership changes, but that's why I ranked it number 1.
Okay. I ranked it number 1 simply because it's basically already being used as open space, that we've got a strong desire in the community, as we hear every year at our events, to keep it as open space when they find out it's not actually open space right now. We already have a bunch of social trails going through there, and I think it would be a gigantic impact on the community if out of nowhere that was no longer accessible to us anymore. So those were more or less my...
It's by far the largest parcel too.
Really defines the landscape of Superior, though. You come over the ridge by dropping into Superior and you see that whole ridge open. It would just be a different feel if that was built. The only other thing I'll say is that with the CenturyLink and Level 3, a merger or whatever, I really think there might be an opportunity there. and I don't know how we go about trying to get a hold of them, because I'm sure it's crazy. But if anybody has any contacts or can figure out any information, I think now is a good time to see if we can't get some conversation going.
Just a quick side note about that. I know that the mayor and the town manager periodically contact that property and check to see status as far as this discussion goes.
Do you know the last time they've done that?
Only maybe 3 or 4 months ago.
Okay.
maybe.
Okay.
I want to say
Which
this
is
last
after
time.
the merger/acquisition, whichever it was, I can't remember, was announced.
Yeah, but they seem to always have changes.
Yeah, there's always, right.
Because one of our members ran into the CEO once on the gondola skiing, but then 3 months later, he was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was like, oh.
One thought too about the, pursuing, besides acquisition, looking at deed restrictions at the same time as well. Because I mean, if you had a deed restriction on that property that it could never really be built further along than it is, and there were easements for trails, that would be a huge value.
Yep, and I think that's an excellent point, not just for this property, but for a lot of the properties we're discussing. I think what we haven't done a lot of in the past is explore the other options besides acquisition for how we can try to keep these parcels as open space. So I think one of the next steps that we should be focusing on is what are those options? How can we develop those options, whether it's partnerships, whether it's easements, what have you. I think that's got to be something that we start considering more of. And if there's going to be some group that leads the way within Superior on that, I think that's going to fall to us. So whether it's in a month, 2 months, 3 months, sometime down the road, I think that's got to be one of our focuses that we can get on our agenda and start looking at, talking at, and developing more. Okay. Any other comments about level 3?
I mean, I pretty much echo the comments that have been made. I mean, I put it 1 because it's the property I think that has the most potential, the most use, and I consistently hear from people I talk to that say, exactly what everybody else has said, is that they're surprised it's not already open space.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, losing that parcel has the biggest impact to the town of Superior versus any of the other ones we're looking at. So to me, it was a clear 1.
Okay. So moving on to numbers 2, which was Rogers Farm. Does everybody know these parcels? Do I need to pull up the map each time? Are we good?
I brought my map with me.
Yeah, my map too.
Okay. Do we even have the map? Is the map in here, Allison?
It is.
Am I blind?
Parcels OSAC 2017 is what I've got it
Yeah.
called. But I don't see it
Maybe
there.
in a subfolder.
Oh.
Find it for you.
That way the audience can see what we're talking about also. Keep you guys coming along with us.
Can you type in chili?
While she pulls that up, I can give my thoughts on Rogers Farm. I really like that property because it seems like it would connect the new town center with the older part of Superior, and kind of surrounding it seems like there's already open space.
Does that kind of help this one, or do you
No,
want
The purple one.
This
Yes.
is the one that.
that one?
Yeah. It's, like I said, the name, it says parcels _ OSAC 2017, so you might search for parcels.
Allison, is there? I've got it right here, and I can forward it to you if that's. Let's see.
I'm not sure if.
Oh, that would help better. Sorry.
Let me see if I can. Yeah, the email into the boardroom is different, and I'm. Let's see.
So if we want
There
to
it
just.
is. Yep,
Yeah, there
that's
it
it.
is.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank-
It's in a subfolder in that folder.
Thank you much.
We
Okay.
have a lot of documents.
So, level 3 is what we were just talking about. That's on the very south side. Moving to Rogers Farm. And just a note, this actually isn't the right parcel. The Rogers Farm is actually right here. So pretty much right next to where we were looking at, but this is the Rogers Farm.
We actually own the purple piece that's on that, right?
Yes.
Yep.
So anyway. Rogers Farms discussion.
Well, I'll tell you why I did it 4 and not 1 was that I thought that it would be a great asset to the town, but not as open space. I thought it would be better as a park or something else that went into Parks 1 and 2 or had access to that creek, but not as, you know, and this is where I'm still trying to understand this, but our charter is to make open space that's, you know, trails that would have trails on it, but that's pretty much it, right? Not parks or not, I don't even know, dog parks or riding stables, right? Is that inside our purview or not? That seems like that's more ProStack than OSAC.
Right, but we're also looking at value to the town, whether it's pristine open space or natural open space. If we were to combine OSAC and ProStack, I think they would rate it highly as well for the parks aspect. I ranked Rogers and Level 3 pretty close to one another. Level 3 just because it's so big and it's such a huge border Superior. Rogers Farm because it is that space between the creek and our future trailhead that you want to have a nice connection. And the views through there as you're coming up McCaslin, are part of what, people see now as part of what Superior is and their identity. Whether it's a park or not, whether it's grass that you can play on versus natural, I don't care personally. I think it'd be probably better suited for a park, like you said, but it's still, open space. It's, in my opinion.
But if we're trying to redo the open space document that was done, right? Don't we need to stay? Do we need to stay true to the charter or not?
So, in my opinion, the way we need to at least look at these is the idea for the open space rankings was initially to help identify how we would use the open space tax funds that we get. The tax funds were specifically for open space. We haven't heard from the town's lawyer about exactly how that's defined, but typically parks aren't part of open space. Dog parks aren't typically part of open space. You can make the argument that certain dog parks can be. I mean, maybe the one up next to Marshall Mesa could be. There was a one in Jeffco that was literally on the side of a mountain that could be open space. But typically it's got to be more open space rather than naturalized, manicured park. So when I was making my decisions anyway, I was 100% focused only on open space. And I completely agree. I think that some of these would be better suited potentially as parks rather than open space, but that was how I made my decisions and my rankings.
I sort of made it with 2 other things in mind of how quickly it would come off the market being one, or how, so when I looked at Rogers, the reason I ranked it, I think I ranked it 3, right?
Click back to the rankings.
Yep. Was, again, just for that part, really, that was near the creek. So that would be the part. So I would also look at this as one, is there any splitting of it or saying, this part remains, sort of to mimic what we want to do over the other side following the creek corridor. But I ranked it higher, too, because I think that a decision will come either by it will get developed or, this one's probably off the table by the end of the year. One way or the other.
So
right?
we do have a little bit of an update on this. We'll talk about that further after we've all talked about our reasoning.
But that's sort of why I ranked that 3, and I ranked the Harrius 2 for the same, more so not for the whole parcel, but the parts of the parcel that I really think that OSAC would want to protect as open space. Though I recognize, like Sean said, that there's a contingency in town that says, that there's a mixture of open space versus parklands that would go together nicely from a town's perspective of acquiring something.
One of the reasons why I ranked it number 1 was it seemed that it was the property that the most people would be passing, or it could go pretty much like on our daily commute, right? Or as we're going to school or to work, a lot of people are using McCaslin, and so it's just right there compared to some of the other properties which were a little bit harder to get to.
Yeah, and see, I kind of thought of it a different way. I thought of it as, hey, this is a really busy piece of road and roundabout and everything like that. And so when I was comparing it to Zaharias, I thought, which one would I rather take a stroll at? And to me, it was Zaharias, because even though 36 is relatively close, there's still some natural features and things you could get off. So, I mean, to me, it was a close 2 and 3. And I went Zaharias kind of for the opposite reason. You went Rogers there. So it's kind of interesting to see how everybody thinks of it.
Yeah. And my ranking was more based off some of the other things we talked about in the past, where it's a very important view corridor. I mean, it's along the original rankings back in 2005, something that they held very highly in their esteem was, can we see the mountains to the west? Can we ensure that the open space out there can at least visually be accessible to everybody? And I mean, depending on where you are, that's going to maintain the view corridor. So that was one of the higher things that I considered as well.
So just for the audience, just so you guys know, we didn't just do this on gut feeling. We did actually go through 2005, pull out certain metrics that we thought were really important to use. For instance, I used aesthetic, land size, proximity and access, surface water on property. Connectability, right, corridors, which is...
Wildlife migration patterns.
Right, and then, but also how, in terms of, that's the ideal, right? And then there's the realistic part of it, you know, what's its availability and value, and then the level of threat of being purchased by another outside entity, private entity. So we kind of went through those metrics, each one of us, to rank these.
Yeah. And also to note, we did them individually and then compiled them, so not to influence each other.
Right.
Yeah. Today, I don't have anything else to add to Rogers Farm. So, just a quick update. I don't know if anybody watched the board meetings work session on this past Monday, but the developer came back and there was kind of a informal discussion between him and the board about what can be built by right currently and what could possibly be done with a PD amendment. There was, or a PD, I guess. There was still clearly quite a bit of interest on the developer's part to develop the property. They bought it to develop. I don't see this one going up for sale. They clearly wanted to proceed. The real topic of that conversation was more, do we proceed with what we're allowed to do right now, or will the board be interested and willing to actually move forward if we come back with another concept plan to help give us enough direction that we can move forward at that point? So it basically sounded like it's going to move forward. It's just how. Mark, I had a real hard time at the end figuring out what that final conclusion was. Is there anything that you can add that?
Just to correct one thing you just said, I don't think anybody was suggesting that the developer submit another concept plan, and I think that was one of the things that led to the frustration, given that the developer had previously submitted 2 concept plans, and it was the second concept plan which kind of led to the frustration after the November meeting, which then is kind of leading towards their inclination to just build by use by right under the existing zoning. So the board seemed a bit split about what we were saying. Some people liked the existing zoning, and part of the property was already platted, so there's already lots that have been platted back in like 1905, and then half of it has not been platted, so like half of it would require some sort of application from the developer. So I think some of the board members were suggesting let's think about this comprehensively, and rather than doing it in piecemeal and doing it with use by right, that we take another look at areas where we can agree on and try to develop it, pursuant to a PD. And I don't know whether the developer is willing to do that or not. So.
Okay. And that was my misconception. I thought they were talking about going back to a concept plan. I realized it was jumping
Yeah.
straight to a PD.
But I don't think that they're looking to sell the property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just put just a thing just for you, Mark, when it comes back, we're looking, as you know, we want to do Shan Shan as a trailhead.
Mhm.
So when you guys think of that, of any rights of access or
Right.
roads or anything.
And that was something we talked about on
Mm-hmm.
Monday. is
Okay,
that
yeah, I
we
haven't had a
certainly
chance
wanted
to look at.
And that was some of the concern that was raised during public comment during the work session, was the traffic on the existing road with the trail, and building a parking lot near Shan Shan to alleviate some of the traffic. So, it was.
Yeah, so
that
I
would
know
be
we've
something
brought
that,
it
that
up,
we could
yeah.
we could certainly address if we did it in a PD.
Yep.
But regardless, I think
Yeah.
that's a plan
Yeah.
for the town.
And then the other piece, just as we mentioned, trying to protect what can be protected on the creek side, too, of leaving that in a more natural state, or,
Yep. And I,
or thinking, or at least be thinking of it as things are happening.
and again, that sounded like the developer mentioned that as well.
Right,
Yeah.
because there's parts of it that are currently in the floodplain that
Yep.
they can't develop on anyway.
Yeah.
So,
What does PD stand for?
plan development.
Great.
So it's a way of, you have zoning on existing areas of, you got commercial, you got residential, but then you can modify the zoning with a PD where it's a planned development, like Rock Creek is a planned development where it's, master plan, and it can affect the zoning in a comprehensive manner on a specific development.
Thanks.
So if anybody wants to watch that, it's online, and it's the very first thing that happens in the meeting, and lasted about an hour or so.
And you see both concept plans too, so it was pretty good.
Yep. Okay, so moving on to Zaharias.
I'll go first. I guess I look like the black sheep up here. And I think had I heard your guys' comments before I went out and looked at the properties and knew more about the history of Zaharias, I wouldn't have ranked it number 8. I had originally put Anderson and Zaharias at the bottom of my ranking, just because of its proximity to 36. And when I went out and looked, it didn't look like there was very much there, but after hearing about all of the wildlife and how it could be used for trails or for the animals and wildlife especially, I would not have given it an 8. So you could just
Well, a key part to me for Zaharias, I ranked it 3, but I think another key part of that is still having a corridor that goes from Boco all the way over to Zaharias. So Anderson getting some kind of a corridor through there is, in my opinion, kind of important. I mean, to attract more wildlife over in that area. I mean, just I've seen, bald eagles and stuff over there as well, which is pretty cool. But just having the access for other wildlife to get to that is also important, so, which kind of ties into the Anderson property.
Yeah, I saw it as, an area, or I was kind of quick to dismiss it at first as well, because it is, abruptly against 36. But I think when I started walking around in the area, I started thinking of, with some buffers, natural buffers of some sort, I think you can kind of get away from that, as well as it also kind of serves as the buffer to the edge of the town. And with 88th, the traffic and everything, to me, protecting that from a development would be a better impact than Rogers Farm. That's why I went 2 versus 3 there, because Rogers Farm, there's still going to be traffic up and down McCaslin. McCaslin's a busy throughway in general, and 88th is busier than we probably all ever expected it would be 10 years ago. But I think anything else over there just adds to that problem. So that, to me, it was, protecting it from further development for, the traffic on 88th and the potential for wildlife corridors and connectivity through, as we look at, the plan from west to east, basically in Superior.
One comment too, I agree with Sean with the corridor, and that's why I ranked Zaharias and Anderson 2 and 3, because it would be really valuable to have that whole stretch. But I mean, I know Anderson's pretty much off the table.
Yeah.
But I was purely, rating it on value for what I thought was value for open space.
And that's an interesting point, because I had a hard time not letting preconceived notions of what is potentially already under a development path forward in my rankings. Because to me, Anderson's is valuable, but in our last meeting we talked about there's already a proposal out for it. Looks like things are going to happen, so it was hard for me to move it way up my rankings knowing that in the back of my head.
Yeah. It I think does help though, seeing how high we've ranked some of these, even though they might be under development real soon, because it gives a message to the board, it gives a message to the developer. It still kind of puts a stake in the ground, saying this is what we think is still important. So still good.
I talked about this when we talked about it on its own, but I ranked it number 2 just because of the reservoir and protecting that piece. And I think for Zaharias and Superior 15, I know that we have the Lakeshore thing possibly out there, but I think those were also 2 properties that people throw around of where a built rec center could happen in the town. But I think it's something, again, like I don't know that the whole property, all 23 acres, is worth keeping open, or is there ways to protect parts of it or put it in some type of open space with parklands next to it, or if it was a rec center, it would still have that feel of you just come for that. It's not something that's 24/7. It's I know that there's a lot of fear in town of adding to the traffic of 88th Street. It's really not going to, nobody wants to see it be hugely developed with, multiple apartments and things that's just going to try to dump into that same area.
I think it's interesting to note that there's a pretty clear delineation in our groupings here. I mean, our top 3 are tightly bunched, and then we have the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are fairly close. So, I mean, I think we've effectively kind of made a top tier and then our secondary picks, as we've put this together.
Yeah, it's a good observation. I pretty much agree with what everybody said. I think my biggest thing was knowing the wildlife that's out there and the fact that, it was before my time. Patricia might have been during when you joined, but OSAC worked hard to get that reservoir back into a functioning state. So, I've used the word that it's a gem for Superior, and I'd love to make sure it gets utilized as much as possible. So that was kind of.
Yeah, I came on right. It had already started, but it got approved while I was first on the board. That Boulder said yes, and all that was going to happen. So it's been exciting to watch that come to fruition.
Okay. Any other comments on Zaharias? Okay. The Superior 15. So this was not on the map. We added this after the map was created, but this is the Superior 15 over here. The town has already purchased it, but there is not a set use determined for that land at this point. So that's why it was on our list and why we added it to the rankings. I can start. My ranking was based more on the fact that, kind of similar to with level 3, people are very much used to seeing that entire corridor all the way on the north end of Colton being open. That it's, again, become something that people are accustomed to. That, in my opinion, it was something that has kind of become a staple of what Superior is, and we have these nice big long stretches of green spaces that act as riparian corridors and allow animals to go back and forth. And the fact that that one pretty much got us all the way up next to the open space on the west seemed like it would be a big cutoff for that corridor, which is what, for me, pushed it up to number 4. So that's kind of what I base my ranking off of.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I'm one of the two that ranked it a little lower. Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Ken. I guess, again, I'm clouded in my ranking of this one, knowing that the town already owns it.
Yes, and the same as the other one that's at number 7.
Right. And so I think I artificially drop it because I relax about that property not being, a massive hotel or something like that at this point. I do agree with you that it provides a good connection. I mean, we drive down Colton from the east to the west. I mean, you see all the way down Colton Road up to the top of the mesa, and I think it's valuable. I'm glad that the town owns it. As far as open space, I guess I put it a 7 because of, like I said, my knowledge the town owns it, and also when I thought about what would we do there as an open space, it's kind of just a rough property to me. I mean, it's relatively flat, no trees, and I saw more potential than some of the others from an open space standpoint. Why I moved it further down.
Okay, to counter that point, so looking long term, like I spoke in the last meeting, if we end up buying this rec center and we have to find money to fund that rec center, for instance, and we end up deciding, or the board decides that we want to put that land back up for sale, I don't know if that's a reasonable thing or not, but I would prefer to keep that as open space and try to figure out a way to repurpose it, whether, again, if it's an equestrian center or something that can be used for open space purposes. As Ken noted, it does, in my opinion, add value because it kind of opens up to the Boulder County open space there, and I know that the people that live around there, Tracy in particular, prefer having it open than potentially having a library or something there. But again, that's, this is with a caveat that I ranked it with 4. If the town.
There's a lot of moving parts. If you knew the town was going to sell it, then
right.
For me, it would jump up probably number 1.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
right, and we don't know what's going to happen. I remember way back when the Daily Camera that Clint, before he became mayor, had stated to the Daily Camera that he didn't see why the town would buy it or why they bought it. So I don't know if his opinions have changed at all. But with that in mind, that kind of made me a little nervous.
I ranked it 4, but I think the same thing. I had a difficult time with it just because it is already owned. But I see it as not so much remaining open space, but I see it as a, like I said, if it's somewhere where we allow horses to go and be equestrian, or I have 2 younger boys. If that became a skate park, they would just lose their minds, But it feels like something that could become there that, again, would be on more of some of it, remaining open space around it, but some type of park amenity as well. And it kind of gets into that strange area of, like, that's not really what we're doing. We're talking about the open space part. But I do like you said, with Calamonte building up, it's nice to have that visual break as well there and not have everything be dense and you sort of go along, and that kind of helps with the starting it. Once you get past Safeway, you have the community park, but you have that sort of nice, nothing's tall and blocking your views and going across, so that part is good. But I don't know that I'd want it to say, oh yeah, well, just leave it completely untouched.
No, not the way, not as is, right?
Yeah, as is. I mean, So
Yeah, and I think that would have changed my ranking a little bit too, right? As a park, I think it's highly desirable, but as open space or, trail access through there doesn't get you anything. It's an easy, accessible piece of land for a park, right? You've got Colton and McCaslin right there. So, with a different lens, I might have ranked that a little bit higher.
yeah.
Okay. Bulljack. So, Bulljack is the property on the southwest side of Superior that we're looking at. I can jump in first. Again, I used both the prior rankings from back in 2005 in the understanding that a lot of the desire from residents back then was to, again, try to maintain view corridors, make sure nothing went up that would block views of mountains and whatnot. Looking along the line of the western half of Superior, this is clearly on that, which kind of put it up high for me, but the piece of property itself doesn't hold a ton of value as far as what we could do with it. I mean, more or less just keeping it open and undeveloped so it doesn't become something big is kind of the biggest value that I saw with it. So I that's why it wasn't higher on my list, but it's also why it wasn't last on my list.
Yeah, I think I ranked it 5 and it ended up 5th in our rankings. So
Let's pull it up.
About average. I put it in the middle because I think it's an important view corridor. I also think that if it does inevitably go up for sale, that it's probably going to be very expensive because it backs up to 10 miles of open space to the west. Right. And so I struggled with that a little bit. I was of the mindset of, I believe Boulder County now owns the properties directly west of it, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was kind of the mindset of, if we put, let's talk hypothetically, we were to have that property and Boulder County were to do something trail-wise with that property, maybe that's a better location for a trailhead than Shan Shan. Now that, like I said, that's a lot of things happening, but it provides to me a good viewpoint. It's up on the hill, looks west, but the shape of the property itself, I think, presents a problem.
I ranked it lower just because I know, knowing it's a working farm, I'm like, oh, nothing's going to happen anytime soon. Like if I had fear that something was going to, that it was going to come up, I certainly wouldn't want anything really developed there. Like, I don't know if they sold it to another farmer, rancher, I'd probably be okay with that, but I would worry about them selling it to something that was gonna all of a sudden put a whole neighborhood or 200 houses in there or something. Mm-hmm. But that's why I ranked it a little lower, because I was like, oh, I don't think it's going anywhere soon. But I do think that even Boulder County would want to absorb that into those open space lands.
Mm-hmm. For me, I didn't really think about what would happen if it got sold and developed, but more about all of the open space that's around it. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't think that buying that or not buying that would prohibit wildlife migration patterns just because there's so much space around it.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if Boulder County owns that, then perhaps they would want to buy it and just build out that open space.
Yeah, my thinking on that one too, I had it last, but it was, if the use were to remain the same, I think that would be fine, because it really doesn't add much value to acquire as open space. But if you knew that it was going to be sold with the idea of developing it, can the use, right now it's not zoned for building, but if it were to be sold, a builder can come in and say, I want to rezone it and build on it. That would be the risk.
Well, and I thought the same thing. It just seems like it's a weird piece of property to build on. I don't know how much you really could build on that with the grade and the slope and the skinniness of it, and so that's why it was lower for me.
Mm-hmm. Cool. I think that all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The next parcels were the 76th Street parcels. So all the way at the northwest side of the town. So back behind the Costco area.
Well, since I ranked it pretty high, I'll start. Sean, I think your comments made me relook at this property. I think that, they've been wanting to figure out access into the single tree area from the underpass and from Louisville. And the fact that there's going to be a bike path along Marshall now from the park and ride all the way up to that underpass.
I don't know if anybody saw, but that's now moving forward. I think it was 2 town board meetings ago. I got the thumbs up. So all the way from the Superior Park and Ride up to the underpass, there's now going to be a trail. And Allison, was that the one that you wrote the grant for?
Cool.
All right.
Yep. Be soft surface or pavement, or do we?
Pavement, right?
Pavement.
It'll be similar to what's on the other side of the highway, but it gives us direct access now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But so maybe I think I just happened to read that article, and then thinking about access, if you could access into those trails from there, now you've actually got a feasible connection into that trail on the north side of town, which the closest one we have is quite a bit south from there. So that, and realizing how big of property it was, when you first look at it, it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
But when you see how big it is, there's room probably for a trailhead there, parking lot, trailhead, and maybe a dog park kind of thing. So that's why I took an extra hard look at that and ranked it a lot higher.
I'll jump back to.
Granted, there's a lot of work that would need to be done. I mean, how many houses are on there? I mean, there's multiple buildings and structures.
It's 6 properties. And trying to acquire 6 properties, I don't know if that's reasonable or not. How would you do it one at a time and just hope for the best? Would you try to buy them all? I don't know how you would go about doing that. That's the reality of the problem we have, and that's kind of why it dropped down, I think.
I didn't know that part. I thought it was 1.
No, it's 6 separate properties. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this property. I mean, I went out there and looked, and it kind of sits on the western edge, and you feel kind of like you're out on the edge of the, the wilderness. And so, I put it in. I think what I have it at 4. I think the thing that kind of made me land at 4 and not go any higher is that it's kind of hard to connect it in with the rest of the town and where everybody else is. It's right there on Marshall Road. But I think it has a lot of potential, and the size of it surprised me as well. I ride by that area all the time, never really had noticed it, and so it wasn't until I kind of went up and actually surveyed the area that it grew on me quite a bit. I mean, I think I originally would have probably had it 7 or 8, and then spent a little time out there and thought, this has a lot of potential.
So, please.
2 things that I liked about it were those views of the Flatirons and how it really was like right there on the edge. But it was also one of the only properties that I noticed that had trees on it, or a lot of trees, so that kind of struck me as a different type of wildlife. But I didn't realize that it was 6 different properties, so that's very awkward.
Which is the reason why I rated it, unfortunately, so low, because I agree with everything you guys say. It's great views, etc., trees, landscaping, rolls, etc., but in reality,
a lot lower if it was listed as 76 feet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I mean, I think as I looked it up, it was roughly 12 acres. I don't know why the 2005 said 30 acres, but it's really only about 12 acres of land. So right on the edge. So I would imagine that those people would probably want high values for that individually.
I wonder if when they included it, Guardian was included as part of it.
It was.
Yeah,
it was
so
included as part of it.
That's probably where it was the higher
Yeah.
part of the thing. That's why I ranked it low, because it's 6 properties, and I thought, how are you gonna get 6 people? Though I like everybody's idea. As you say it, I say, I should move it up in my list, because I think, to your point, you could get a nice parking lot there. Keep people who come in from outside would just stop there on Marshall and park there and go out and get on the trails and not bring as much traffic in. And it's nice to have all the connections, for the people that do that. That's what they want. They want to connect throughout and have safe manners of doing that. But I ranked it low because I was like, well, it would be hard to get all 6 people to.
Yeah. I think the hardest part about all of these rankings is just all the unknowns and moving parts and assumptions you have to make with what could happen in the future. I ranked it last because for me it had to do with how beneficial is it for how many people, and that's kind of the lowest densely populated area in Superior. It doesn't have the direct value that, say, level 3 does for a lot of people. I thought about the trailhead portion, had kind of the same thoughts you guys did, but then I jumped back and was like, well, Shan, if we go with that, then we don't need another one. So I kind of built the Shan assumption into my ranking, and I mean, I was all over the map going between 4 and 8 on this and ended up with 8, but based off everything you guys said, I could have easily landed anywhere in between also.
I think it's a valid point to say that it's a hard area for high usage, just given where it is within the town or the town area. I certainly agree with that.
Okay. The Anderson property. So this is the Anderson property. It abuts both 36 and the downtown Superior development. Again, as discussed at the prior meeting, it is currently there is a PD, I believe, with town staff right now, but it hasn't got any further yet.
Right, there's an application right now.
An application.
That my understanding is it's still under staff review, and then would need to go to planning commission and then to the board.
Okay.
But it would be an FDP, so
an FDP.
Yeah. Which is the final development plan. So they're planning something on it.
Yeah. So anyone want to start?
I think knowing that if we can just preserve, again, a corridor, because we already have the beginnings of a corridor on the western edge of that property, and just continue it down to 88th, kind of at a diagonal toward the Zaharias property. We already have some kind of wetland type area in the southern corners of that, so if we can kind of preserve that, already knowing what we know, I think that'd probably be the best thing that we can do at this point. But that's, again, why I ranked low.
And Tract H cuts right along it, right? Does Tract H go all the way to 36? I thought I saw that on the maps.
Yeah, it does.
From Monday.
Right. So, we can give an update real quick.
Yeah,
it was going to be later in the meeting, but Tract H was discussed during the board meeting on Monday. It was approved to go forward. There was some discussion that came out of the Planning Commission's meeting about whether a trail should actually be added to it. The board decided that yes, we should add a meandering trail to the initial design and move forward with that. One of the things that was also discussed is Tract A, which is part of the Discovery Office area, was also dedicated to the town, so we have that as well. So the idea is that rather than just having this trail in the middle leading to nowhere right now, that there will also be that connector at least up to McCaslin constructed. And then the idea is to hopefully work with the Anderson developers to connect it into their property. That way we have kind of that continuity in the trail system coming down. What Anderson is planning, I don't think any of us know right now, but that was what was discussed on Monday. So.
Nice.
So what does that mean moving forward? Does that mean it's going to planning and that it will be built, or?
It's already out for construction bids.
Out for construction bid, okay.
So it would fall off our list,
Okay.
then, I would assume, right? And then we would approach it more on the other side of making sure it maintains, hopefully, the zoning of 35% and getting it to connect to the pieces that we want to connect it to.
We'll have to be vigilant when the Anderson property comes up to see if there's any input we can try to give during public comment and whatnot to try to go out and stress that having some type of connectivity for both trails and a wildlife corridor is of our highest value, and to try to convince the board to push on that and see if the developer's willing to listen.
Yeah, somebody who cuts through Ken's neighborhood to avoid the roundabout at 5 p.m., that trail's important to me.
Yep.
On my bike, I should say, not
Yeah.
in my car.
So I basically have the same reasoning for Sean for my ranking. We'll jump back to the ranking sheet. So that's why it was low for me as well. Move on.
Yep.
All right. Final one was Ridge 2. Again, Ridge 2 is up on the western side, kind of in the middle-ish of Superior. We talked about this actually as a group maybe 6 months ago, a year ago.
Yeah. Mhm.
It came up for sale, and the problem is its proximity to the condos up there, the fact that there's not great access there, the fact that you can't access the water there, and that it's actually surrounded by a chain link fence. It wasn't all that desirable to us then, and we kicked the idea around, and my views haven't really changed, so I still kept it fairly low, with the only redeemable part in my mind being that, again, it's on the western side, and if we have more stuff go up, it's going to continue to block views, but I didn't rate that very high on this particular parcel.
Yeah, I had it as my number 8 because it's so constrained. You have the water on one side, you have the already built apartment complex on the other, you have McCaslin. I just didn't know what we could do with it if we had it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me too, it was the access. There was very little access to it, and then migration patterns seem like they could happen on the open space around that water.
Seems from a development perspective too, to be a pretty tough parcel to build on.
It's got a lot of slope.
Okay. So I think what would be good at this point is, I mean, we've walked through it all. We've looked at our rankings. We've all shared our rationale behind everything. Does anybody want to I mean, this is all quantitatively based off what our rankings were. I think it's fair to allow us to, after hearing kind of the qualitative reasons behind everybody's rankings, to see if there's anything that we want to adjust. So after hearing all of this, does anybody want to make an argument to try to convince the group to move something up, down, or otherwise?
Back to what Joel said, though, do we have to necessarily do them 1 to 7? I mean, we could have top 3 and then a lower 5 that are all kind of evenly ranked.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's clear that there is a top 3 in our rankings here, and that whether we only go after number 1, it doesn't make sense since we see how close those 3 are. So I think it's one of those. Those are the 3 we really keep our eye on and make sure it's on our radar, and try to push the town to do whatever we can with. And then the others, just even though we have them in set rankings, just looking at them as 2 separate groups is what makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, I feel like you've got the top 3, then the bottom 3, and then you have the piece we already own in the middle is like the divider of what do you do with that piece in the middle, like the Richmond 15. What do we suggest to the town that they do with that?
And I think too, if you took out my 8 for Zaharias, it would bunch those top 3 even closer together.
Yeah.
And we'll know what happens with Rogers Farm, I would assume, fairly shortly.
Yeah.
So that's interesting too, because if Rogers Farms falls out of that, then the top 3 becomes
A top 2.
Zaharias and Superior 15.
Right.
Yeah.
And the Superior 15 is, based off our rankings, still a far distance away from those the other ones. So it's...
But I think, like you said, I think the bias on the Superior 15 is that it's already owned.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it becomes like, you're just like, well, we already own it. What do we?
But
I don't know. I mean, if you if you didn't know that it was already owned, I don't know if it would change the rank here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so necessarily.
I mean, I
either.
wouldn't change it.
Yeah.
I think
Based
I
on
would
the
change
top
mine a
three.
bit. I mean, I don't think I put it in the top
No, but that's
three.
what I mean. Would it go up into the top three
I
or
don't
not?
think so.
Yeah.
No.
Well, if me and Joel both went to number one, it might.
Which I live close to there, so.
I think it looks good. I think.
Yeah,
You know, it's not how I ranked it, but I agree with it.
Yeah.
I think it's been good conversation, and I've learned a lot about, some of the challenges with it. I mean, the 76th Street stuff, said I didn't realize it was 6 properties. And I think it gives us a better position when we look at these and say, hey, we got 3 properties that we're most interested in. Would you like to dance with us? Okay. If not, then how about you?
Mhm.
It doesn't lock us into it's level 3 or bust, in my opinion.
Yep. Okay, so it sounds like we're in a good place. Yeah.
Yep, go ahead.
1, 2, 3.
Level 3, where exactly is that? Kelly McCauley?
Yes. Yes, level 3 is all the way on the southern edge.
Do we know exactly like how many people actually use that?
It's a significant amount. We get a lot of people actually talking to us specifically about that property. There's a running commentary about how many people are out there with dogs, so we know there's
Leashed dog use
yeah.
versus leashed use.
There are a series of.
I mean,
social
I've
trails.
never ever been up there, so I'm just wondering, as opposed to the other 2, because that's kind of way at the edge of the property, where the other 2 are more in the consolidated area, if that would, have any, I just didn't know how many people actually, do we have any way to see how many people use each of these parcels?
A lot of it is just based off word of mouth observations. What we do a lot of outreach at all the town events, so you kind of get a good pulse for the community, but we don't have any studies or anything to specifically say that. The 2 properties that we always hear the most about are level 3 and Zaharias,
Right.
for sure.
I mean, Zaharias you can't use because it's fenced off.
Yeah, there's nothing
I mean,
to
it says you're not
use.
allowed to go in there.
Well,
But-
no, that's not true. There is
Really?
a section, if you look on the BOCO property search map, you can access it because it is not privately owned. There is, on the southwest edge, there are 2 access points that you can get into it. They're not per se private to the Zaharias.
Are you saying
Is that
over
along
here?
the
Yeah.
southwest?
So if you, here, can I see?
Yeah.
Look here. Go there.
On the level 3 usage, it's about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, level 3 came through and fenced off part of the property to discriminate, or discourage, I should say, trail users from coming through there. There was
Right.
a significant outcry from the
Yeah.
community.
It's probably the most utilized.
Really?
Yeah.
All the way up there?
Yeah.
Well, because people, so I know for, like, the Superior Running Club has a run through there at least every 6 weeks. They
There's-
run through there. There's mountain bikers
Yeah.
that go through there. There's all the south of Colton, Rock Creek neighbors do a lot of
Right.
walking through the
So
trails.
you're talking when you're going up McCaslin and 128's here on the left, all the way up there?
Yeah,
Yep.
so they go
Wow.
all the way through, yeah,
So you
because
can
it's
see
challenging, yeah.
Okay.
There's an access point
Oh,
here, and there is an access point here.
So those are misleading, though.
But,
'cause
yeah, but
when you go out
you're
there and
not
look
allowed,
at it,
you're not allowed in here.
The fence is actually open right here.
it is, but you can
Wouldn't it be
walk
right
all
into
of maybe
marsh?
10 or 15
Nope.
feet until you hit marsh.
No.
Did you go all the way around it?
Yeah. Well, I
'Cause
mean,
there's old
Randy and I
warnings.
went right there. That's where we got in. That's where we got in to get into this.
Yeah, and how far were you able to get in?
All the way
like-
down to the fenced area right around the.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's old warnings not to go in, because
Well, it's a reservoir. That's
When
why.
like a sanctuary where you're not supposed to be in. But I'm just wondering, like, this whole area in here, like, no one can go in there.
Because of
'Cause-
private property.
Right,
private
so,
property.
like, what's the difference between that and like level 3?
So level 3 allows.
They do allow?
They do.
Yeah.
They put so the reason for the fencing was that somebody dropped a significant number of tires on their property for waste.
Gotcha.
So that's when they fenced it. And then a number of people called the town, and the town asked, could we mark the fence, because people have been used to it being open, and they would come down on a mountain bike and be taken out by barbed wire at a certain point. And they took it down, but that was the reason why they had put it up, because then they had to deal with the removal of the tires and the waste. And it wasn't as if someone threw one, somebody threw
Oh, okay.
significant number of them.
Yep.
So,
All right.
but they do allow for social access. They haven't stopped us.
It's just,
and they
you
know that townspeople, I wouldn't even say it's just townspeople, because people go and park up on 128 on that overlook.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's other people, because it is a challenging, Joel can say, right? It's challenging biking.
I just didn't think anyone was allowed
Yeah.
back there. That's
Right.
why I've never been up there.
Yeah.
You know, I always go up Colton,
It was-
back in the open space, so. Okay.
June of 2014 is when it happened, so it's been 3 years ago.
Yeah.
since it
Okay.
happened.
All right,
So,
thanks. No, I
No, for sure.
I was wondering why it was such a high priority.
Mhm.
I just didn't think anything was back there to use. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So as far as next steps go, now that we have this, I think the next piece is actually pulling together kind of an updated report. In that kind of subcommittee that we had all kind of volunteered for and whatnot, Ryan and I are on that one.
So I want to send you some updated information. Not all the acreage is correct. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
Yes.
But I want to, okay, you did notice that. And then I'll just send you some other observations I made.
That's excellent.
That are not rated related, so.
Perfect. So I think between now and the next meeting, Ryan, you and I can kind of talk and just give an update to the rest of the committee where we see or where we plan on going, and make sure we're all on the same page.
Ken, to the point of figuring out the other pieces, is that something that you want us to try to research, or is that something that we should ask? Is there an expert that the town knows about that could walk us through it? Like, what's
What do you mean
the-
other pieces? What?
Like, so getting the easements, getting the, like, sort of other than acquiring, you know.
So I think
'cause
that's.
I wouldn't know where to start with.
Yeah, I don't know exactly where to start either. I've been doing some just informal research online. I've found a lot of directions to go. I think one thing that's going to be really important for us is this year making sure we send someone to the COSA conference, because that will be a great resource.
Do we know the date on that?
It's in September. It's in Breckenridge this year. I'll send it out in an email. If anybody's interested, let me know. I think if there's multiple people that are interested, we'll kind of say, probably off of seniority, whoever's been on the committee longest and served the longest will who we default to. But whoever can make it, if we can have someone there, that will be a great place to learn more about it. But beyond that, Allison, I don't know if you have any expertise in.
Well, the conference is September 18th through 20th.
September 18th through 20th. Are you aware if there's anybody on staff that has the type of knowledge about different ways to go about conserving open space, whether it's through easements, the different types of organizations that we can partner with out there, such as land trusts and that sort of thing? I mean,
I don't know if anybody specifically has that expertise, but I can ask them.
okay. So I think between that and all of us starting to do research on our own, that'll be kind of our first step.
Seems like Boulder County might also be a resource for us. I don't know what we can do, who we can reach out to there, but.
So when I first joined the committee, I did do some research on that, and there are a lot of resources out there
Yeah.
already on the web that tell you all the different ways. I don't have them at hand. I could probably dredge them up if I need to, but you can all do your own Google searches too.
Yeah. I don't know if, depending on what the amount we have on our agenda next month, it might make it onto that. And if it does, I'll make sure we give a heads up to everybody saying, hey, we're going to talk about this, do some research. That way we can have a good informed conversation.
There actually might even be information in some of this documentation from all the
In the 2005 report, there
Yeah.
is some suggestions listed. It's like a page. It's not very in-depth, so additional work would be good. But yeah, we have started the thought in the past. Okay, so moving on to the next agenda item, National Trails Day. We heard from the youth leadership tonight, so we've got that squared away. They'll do the flower pots, which is great.
What day is National Trails Day?
June 4th, Sunday. As far as just kind of outstanding things that I was trying to think of, we haven't pulled together the raffle yet, and we haven't gotten any prizes for the raffle yet. I guess my question to the group is, do we still want to continue doing the raffle? The only reason I say that is it hasn't been a draw to get people in. It's been one of those things, once people are there, they are like, oh yeah, sure, I'll put my name in. So it doesn't help get more volume of people. Beyond that, the other valuable piece that might be worthwhile is that gives us a list of contact names. And again, we haven't used that list of names at all for any purpose. So even though we have that, it hasn't been of any value to us. I think the only thing that it truly has helped with in the past is judging the number of people who have attended the event.
And just as a side note, Ashley, our wildlife ecologist, she typically counts for me. So we have like a general count from her physically counting.
Yeah. So I guess it's still nice for the community. It's great to give out open space related gear to the community when they show up, but just figured I'd throw it out there since it hasn't really provided us any.
I guess the only thing would be is, people showing up for the fourth year might be like, where's the raffle? Like,
That's true.
more, like people who, because we do have repeats that,
That's true.
Come through. I agree, like, other than, I don't think GAIN does anything except for someone saying, oh, I won this at the raffle for the open space. I don't know if we just take that, because it's usually about $40, $50 we spend, or
Yeah.
maybe even less, and just buy more dog bone thingies.
The biggest thing I think is the goodwill. It generates goodwill with the community, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's valuable within itself. So, This is something we want to pursue.
I mean, you could try 1 year without and see how it goes.
Yeah,
see what feedback
maybe we
is.
say this one, see if it's missed.
Okay. Well, do you guys want to try that this year? See if anybody even asks about it. And I mean, do we think it's been a draw in the past to say, like, as people go by and say, hey, come get in the raffle, has that given us more people? I mean, I think just having the hawks and the snakes has done that enough.
Yeah, and the water. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Having
So
the water.
continuing with the water, that's the biggest thing
Yeah.
that has been, I think, a draw for
Yeah.
us. Just grabbing people off the trail. So this year we try no raffle, see if anybody says
Yeah, I
anything.
don't see a reason to. We already give lots of stuff away during.
And we're gonna have the dog bones there.
Right.
Yeah. So.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Those were very popular at the event that.
Excellent. Okay. So I guess speaking of the water and juice and whatnot. Oh man, I forgot to ask the youth council if they were going to do snacks this year. They are not doing snacks this year. So we should probably pick up the load on that because snacks are huge also.
Yeah, so there goes our money for the raffle. We'll
Yeah,
just pick
there
up
we
the
go.
snacks. Definitely, you had to do an extra run for water, so
Yes.
we should prepare
Lots and lots of water.
more for that. The juice boxes go quick
Yep.
too, and
Lots of juice, lots of water, lots of just small gummies have been good
Yeah.
in the past, that sort of thing.
Yep.
Generally, I would completely volunteer to pick up all that stuff. June 4th is the day my son is due, so there's a good chance I might not be there. Does anyone else want to volunteer to pick up all that stuff? Afterwards, we just give the receipt to Allison and we get reimbursed from the town. So.
I certainly don't mind picking it up. I will actually be out of town on the 4th, so I will
Okay.
be at the event, but I can certainly do the picking it up beforehand.
And I can also lend out some giant coolers as well. Just anybody know that they're going to be there the whole time and can say, yes, June 4th, this works for me?
I'll be there the whole time.
Do you mind picking up the waters and everything?
No, I don't mind.
Okay.
Or if Joel wants to pick them up and drop them off from my house, I don't mind that either. Either or, it doesn't matter.
Whatever's easiest. I'll pick them up.
Okay.
And then, maybe I'll just have them we won't have another meeting before Trails Day, will we?
Nope.
Yeah, I'll get with you offline and
Yep.
figure out, but I'm in Costco more than I'd like to admit.
Well, you can see my thought. I try to avoid Costco because I always drop more money there than I would like to admit. Even though this part would be reimbursed, I wouldn't get out the door without spending.
Trish, do you need coolers?
Yeah, I
Okay.
will need
I can
cooler.
I can drop off at I think it's 120 gallons for the really big ones.
Nice.
So, do we have a ballpark as to what we would want, like
I-
number of bottles of water? Or?
I recorded it last year. What we ultimately went with, I can shoot you that number.
Okay, perfect.
And do we have commitments from people that are actually going to be there from our committee? Yep.
We do not. That was one of the things we need to discuss right now. So, who's going to be available? Normally, we try to either say the whole time, the first half, or the second half, and just break it out that way. I will tentatively say I'll be there, assuming my son comes late, but otherwise I could be in the hospital. I don't know.
My kids may be in baseball tournaments, but I will be there if they are not. I just don't know what the schedule is yet.
Unfortunately, I'm out of town that weekend.
Expect to be able to be there.
All right. And we'll let Tracy know she has to be there.
Or at least send her three
you guys
workers.
like live across the street. Come on now.
Or at least send her 3 workers. She sent 3 in place of her last year. for the
Oh, that's
board.
right.
Yeah.
The biggest part, from a perspective of, I don't mind being there the whole day. The biggest part for me is I need someone to help set up
Yeah.
and break down.
Yeah.
Like, that's especially if we end up. I won't be able to move those cement.
We didn't have those last year,
things.
did we?
We didn't, but I think they might end up this year because we have a
We will.
bigger.
We
have a
did
bigger
have them
tent.
last year.
We did.
Oh.
Oh yeah. I
It
can't
wasn't for
remember.
all of them. We had just a few.
Because some people brought their own tents.
Yeah, but that's the biggest piece. I'm not lifting the 5-gallon cement
Yeah.
thing.
So I have our order to
Nice.
discuss really quickly. So we've ordered the larger tent and the concrete blocks to hold
Nice.
everything down. 4 10-by-10 pop-ups and 9 tables. And we had only had 30 chairs on there, so I went ahead and I upped it to 50.
Nice.
Just because they're like $1.25 a piece, and to fill up that tent a little more, a little better. So I went ahead and did that. And the order. Is there anything else that the group would like to add to this before I complete this contract?
Yeah, so that's the thing we're gonna have to keep our eye on. I don't think it would go on that contract, but as far as since we're pushing it back further with the big tent, in past years that's been incredibly high grass, and having people actually go out there and sit for the presentations might not be.
It's not high grass in that area. It's higher grass where we've been going, which was more to the right side of the bathrooms.
So now we're gonna be on the
But
left side.
typically, I mean, we'll also keep an eye on it to
Yeah.
make sure
Okay.
that it's not too high. But it's going to be more towards the trail,
Okay.
and as opposed to being on the right side of the restrooms, it'll be more on the south side.
So I'm assuming the big tent will be set up by the vendor, and we'll set up the small tents like we have in the past.
That's correct, because we have irrigation out there, so we have to be really careful about how things are set up. And that's one of the reasons that we don't like staking a lot of tents all along those areas, because there's irrigation lines in there. And that's typically the reason that for most of the events, we order a lot of these cement.
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
And for parking, is Vargas also going to mow the other side of the road?
Superior 15.
Well, typically that area is kept we keep an eye on that area because of Chili Fest and 4th of July and everything like that.
And now they have the gravel, so it's a little bit.
Yeah, it's all
I parked over
pressure
there, it was
fines up
still
there.
really packed, and I remember, I don't know that they mowed
Yeah.
when we went over.
It will be overflow parking. We'll have people parking over there for
There's
sure.
a lot of people.
I think there was crusher fines put down in
There
that
was,
lot,
yeah.
so it should be relatively clear.
Okay.
Perfect. I think we've got everything set then. The schedule's done. The people who are showing up is done. Waters and everything are now taken care of. I think we're good. Is there anything anyone else can think of that we've done in the past that we might be forgetting? I think we're set.
And I sent out a save the date last week.
Saw that. So we'll continue to do the marketing kind of throughout the month. I would say once we get into that last week, people want to hit their social networks or whatever and just kind of prompt even more marketing to make sure everyone's aware of it. That's always good too.
And it's going to be in our pros newsletter also. It's going to be everywhere, so like
Yeah.
we usually publish it.
And Allison, I don't know if it happened in everybody's browser or whether when I opened the pros newsletter on the last one, it abbreviated the letter to only the first 2 stories, and I had to click on like the kind of the ellipses at the bottom to have it open everything. So I don't know if that's
It's your browser. Chrome's been doing that.
Chrome. Yeah, it
too.
was my Gmail. So
Yeah, Gmail's been doing that. I don't know how to fix, but you have to go looking to see, it says this email's been truncated or
Yeah.
something, and you have to click.
I wouldn't have noticed except for the fact that I knew that we had our article in it, and I was like, it's not there. And then, of course, there's like the next 2/3 of the.
Yeah.
So
It's Gmail been doing it for
Okay.
whatever reason. There's been a couple of things from the town that's happened with.
Okay, well, I think we're good then. So jumping over to the 5-year trail plan, which we might as well just call it the trail plan. I don't know why we keep calling it the 5-year trail plan since we do it
It's
every
the
year.
annual trail plan.
Let's see, Allison, how do I get... There we go. All right. So here is the... Let's see, is this the right... Yes, it is. Okay. So let me open up both this and... let's see. Allison, this is the one I sent over to you. Is that... Okay. So I will shoot all of this over to the group later after this meeting, so we can all do our own rankings. It'll be similar to what we did for open space. ProStack has already done theirs. I am going to leave theirs out so that it doesn't influence our decisions. But the way we're going to go about it is, if you look at these, here, let me just make this bigger for us. All right, so the way we're going to look at it is we've got high, medium, and low rankings. So this is just general. You put this on every single trail that's out here. So if you think it'd be a high priority, then you can do that for high, medium, low, whatever. And then the only ones we're actually going to put a rank on are our top 3. So number 1 is your number 1 priority, 2 and 3. If you would like it to be a specific target of this upcoming year, then you can put a X next to it. Don't put an X next to everything. We're not going to put a limit on the number of X's you can do, but just be reasonable and be ready to back up your rationale when we come back together. The only thing that I would like to suggest that we do that ProStack did not do differently is we're going to turn these H's, M's, and L's into numbers anyway so we can get a numerical score. So just put the number instead so we don't have to then make that conversion. So if it's a high, put a 1. For a medium, put a 2, and an L, put a 3. That'll make everything much easier.
I was going to suggest that.
Yeah. So just we'll walk through these real quick. That way everyone kind of has an idea of what we've done in the past, give a little bit of historical context to everything. So we'll just start from the north and go down. So
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
The ones that are built, have they been taken off the list?
So the ones that are built, so number 2, this was designed and constructed this past year. It is still on the map, but it's not on the list to be
Okay,
ranked.
thank you.
So number 2 is not here, and then number 20 was also removed. That was put on the list and the map at the very end of last year, or at the right when we were starting to get things ranked. And then once we started ranking them, everyone's like, this doesn't belong on the map because it's not really a trail. That's kind of an alleyway. So even though 20 is on the map, it's not there either. So 2 and 20 not on our Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So number 13, this is right up next to Davidson Mesa at the underpass. So this is just kind of a connector between the two. I don't actually know how we've got it. So just a connection to Davidson Mesa underpass. What that would look like, we don't know. That one is going to be very difficult to actually do anything with because you have to get CDOT involved. Boulder County, there's a lot of moving parts on 13. It'd be great because it would add more type of safety to crossing there, but that's kind of the background there. Number 14 is this entire long yellow piece here. What we used to have was a trail that kind of went this way.
I was going to say that's the trail behind Sagamore, but now it's in front of Sagamore?
Because we,
Because of all the things, yeah.
Boulder County came back and said we can't, it's too expensive, that's not
Yeah.
realistic.
Okay.
So it just kind of got pushed in front of, and it more or less follows the road now, so I'm thinking that this would more or less look like a sidewalk instead.
I was going to say, a number of the trails end up just being sidewalks that should have been built or
Yeah. So
to
that-
help facilitate people moving.
Yep, so that's number 14. Number 16, that's the Coal Creek Crossing trail. That has some movement on it right now. It has to get approved by Boulder County. We got some updates. Allison sent the dates out. So in all likelihood, that is probably going to get built. But since it hasn't yet, we're still going to go ahead and rank it. It looks like a trail to nowhere, but there's actually the rest of that trail is already built for the Coal Creek Crossing neighborhood. So the Coal Creek Crossing development's already built their half of the trail all the way up to the end of their property. This is just actually completing that trail.
And I actually think that line is like
Too
right
far.
where the knee is. That's the piece that has to be completed. The rest of the trail is already there.
Right.
Yep. Number 10, this is pretty much right at the Rogers Farm area. In the past, we had ended up considering that as not necessarily something we needed to move on, and that maybe we could get whoever developed that property to try to put in some type of trail there. So we were hesitant to try to push that very hard. That's just the history of it. Number 21, that is a trail that, or sorry, number 6. So this is number 6. This is part of what is under design that we put out for design. The idea with this trail and the remaining trails that we have out for design was that it would help provide connectivity for all of Superior for everything out to the west. So that's currently being looked at. Number 21, that is just a way to add one more connection point. That's basically at the Shan Shan property. So that it could end up being kind of worked into a Shan Shan trailhead. It's kind of the top of Shan Shan property, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's where that is.
Yeah. Number 15, this is something we should probably remove, and I think we agreed to remove it last year, but ProStack moved forward with this before we started on it this year, so I think they left it on, but Boulder County pretty much said this is a no-go. So I'm going to rank it as pretty much the last because I know it's not going to happen, and next year we should just remove it completely. Number 4, we had asked this to go under design, but after an initial look at it, it came back that it was too steep right here, and that there would be quite a bit of retaining walls that would need to go in to actually make this a reality, and this would end up being an unbelievably expensive trail. So we decided to leave it on because who knows, at some point maybe we'll want to spend $1 million on that piece of trail, but in all likelihood that's pretty much out of the question, just cost prohibitiveness. Number 9, this is another one we had initially talked about putting up for design. However, on the exact opposite side of McCaslin, there is already a crush refine path. So we ultimately took number 9 off the table because we found that it was duplicative. Honestly, I think this was one we had talked about removing from the list last year too. I don't think ProStack, I don't remember if that we said that for sure, but I think in the future that's something we'll talk about. So again, that would be kind of low on my list. Number 2, we built. So even though it's on here, that's not on your list for rating. Number 11, I don't know how many people have been over here, but the way the sidewalk, the way the trail system works is there is a trail that comes down through here, cuts across right here, and then there's no connection. It's just kind of a blank space. To continue that way, you actually have to come down, you have to cross the creek. You're on the south side of the creek, and then you would have to cross the creek again and go back up. So that just adds an additional connection.
And there's a social trail there
Yeah.
close to it. It's not quite in that spot.
Yeah, it's a little bit further down to the creek. And it's a pretty well-defined social trail. Continuing along this direction, this is number 19. It is actually also a social trail. So this is the Bell Flatirons, previously the Horizons complex. There is a social trail there right now, and I do believe the social trail does actually continue, but I'd have to go verify that. I don't know for sure.
Is that the east side of the creek? Is that?
Am I looking at the right spot? Here, let me zoom in some.
No, because I remember last year they discussed they wanted to, or the thought was to make that trail concrete all the way to where the bike path connects.
Yeah, so, and Horizon, or Bell Flatirons has recently asked for that as well.
But it is concrete already on the northwest side of that creek.
Yes, exactly. So the reason why I don't think we've done things in the past on this is that it's basically duplicative. That there's concrete, I don't know if we can see it, but that basically does run along this area. I can't, maybe that's what this is?
No. This trail right here is concrete, and this is concrete, comes down and meets this. There's a social trail that runs on this side that dead ends about here.
Mm-hmm. Right.
This is concrete all the way to the point
Right
where it
there,
makes that
yeah.
hard left, then it turns to crushed gravel.
Okay, so this might just be something we need to update
Yeah.
then. Here, let me see how we have it written on the, what, 19 is that what it was?
Yeah.
19. Convert the Rock Creek Regional Trail to a hard surface. So there you go. So it's changing it from crush refine to a hard surface. And the only reasoning, well, the primary reasoning we would do that is the town plows the snow in the wintertime on anything that's paved. They don't do any snow removal on anything that's not paved. So that's your benefit on that. I would agree with that. My own personal opinion. Yeah. Number 8 is more or less a connection trail from the Autry Park area up to Zaharias. If the reason, again, this hasn't been ranked higher in the past because it's almost a trail to nowhere since this is private property. So if a developer does come in, or if we can get it as open space, something we'd certainly be interested in pursuing is making sure we have a trail across this area somewhere that we can then continue into this, and we can pursue something like that so we can add more continuous loops and greater continuity throughout the trail system. Number 3 here, that was just going to be a overlook for the reservoir. This is something that in previous years had been ranked fairly high, and then when everyone kind of got out there and looked at it and realized how busy 88th is, we said, man, are we really going to want to put the overlook for the reservoir at that spot? And basically the outcome was that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. What might make more sense is rather than forcing that right now, let's give it some time, see if this becomes open space or if it gets developed, and either work with a developer or work with ourselves in Boulder County to put some type of overlook at a more optimal spot. So we certainly don't want to abandon the overlook, but it was kind of decided that this is not the right spot for it. So somewhere in here in the future is where the groups decided to be optimal. Moving down the line, number 22 here, this is a trail that Calmonte Development has to put in. It's not a, they are required to do it. It's going to go in. When it's going to go in, we don't really know, but it's not something that we'll have to pay for. This is another place we've diverged with ProStack in the past. We have never decided to rank developer trails because it has to go in, so why are we ranking it? ProStack has. That caused some strange things to happen when we ranked things last year, because they ranked an extra trail and we just gave that 0. I still don't know why we would rank it, but does anybody else want to rank? ProStack ranked it again this year. So do we want to match them?
I mean, I think the argument for ranking it is continuity with a continuous trail north to south, but that's the only argument I can see for it.
Well, it's going to happen no matter what. So it's one of those. I completely agree with you. That's why I want it there. But I mean,
That runs the whole stretch?
No, they did.
Yeah, right here is where that would end. So should we rank it to make sure our rankings match then?
Yeah,
Is
I
that
just think for that reason we should, even if it's low. Let's
Okay.
just keep them
okay? So
consistent.
we'll still rank number 22 then. So number 1 is basically from that road that where Calmonte is all the way up McCaslin. So again, this is one that we have out for design right now that followed the same idea of wanting to make sure that we had connectivity for all of Superior out to the west. So the idea is that anything up here in this region would be able to get to a single trail rather than having to go on the roads, and could get down to the Colton Trailhead. So that's what number 1 basically represents. Number 7, again, this map's a little bit misleading just because it's a little bit dated now. This is Wildflower Park. This is no longer just an open field. So the path would probably end somewhere over here. Again, the idea is just one more connection point to get people out to a path rather than riding through neighborhoods or walking through neighborhoods. It should be noted that this is one of the trails that was a little bit contentious when we had a public outreach meeting. Right now, this little stretch right here is just one of it's a greenway that just goes in between the houses. The neighbors here basically said we don't want a trail behind our house, and they came out against it. So,
and it's very, very waterlogged down that area. If you've walked it, I don't know if anybody's walked it yet, but it's really, really.
It's really dependent on the time of year. I've walked it several times, and in the spring it's definitely waterlogged. Summer and fall.
Is it a low point or something? Why?
So
Both sides go down like this, and I think also neighbors.
How close is it to the neighbors' houses?
It's probably 20 feet between. I mean, it's like a lot of the greenways, like
Okay.
Yeah.
between houses.
And
There's 6 neighbors, I think 3 and 3 or something on each side.
Yeah, and so there's challenges with that one. It might end up being cost prohibitive just because of design issues, but who knows? That's background on that one. was knock out 18. So this is the Coyote Ridge area. This is also under design. The idea was to basically do some trail improvement from after the floods, because there'd been some erosion and other damage to the trails, and then also adding a additional, I think it kind of looked, Allison, you remember? Is there
I can pull it up.
That would be great.
And one of my questions for this specific area is if the group is still interested in Trail G, which is the
one, the contentious
elbow.
one.
Do you remember the elbow?
It's the other contentious one that came up in the outreach. Because it kind of lines up people, right behind people's houses.
Yeah. Here we go. So yeah, this is on
Pirate
Coyote
Park.
Ridge. Yep, Pirate Park's right there. This was another one that was a little bit contentious initially. Some neighbors were concerned that it would this area, because it's really steep right here. So the idea is that this part would give too much vision into people's houses. At the end of that meeting, it almost sounded like the person, after understanding how the trail would look, wasn't nearly as concerned, because I think he realized it might not be as invasive as initially thought. But that was just the discussion at that night. So this is under design. Allison, do you have any idea of where the process is on those designs? When we'll finally get?
I think they're all running at different paces, and one of the things that I was asked to ask you guys about again was, is there still interest on Trail G, which is this trail?
Which is the Coyote Ridge Trail?
The elbow trail from Pirate Park
This
up,
one.
Where the social trail. I could show you also a picture of it, like closer in.
Yeah. Joel, any?
The social trails go almost the same area. It's a little bit further up that you can get around up in there, but it's not town land.
Yeah.
So there's a good
Yeah.
example of, and it doesn't go straight up this way. It kind of kicks over here and then comes up and around.
And the reason for that is because of the steepness, right?
Yeah, so what we just saw was basically this, right?
Yeah,
Or,
just goes
yeah.
straight up.
Right, where you go straight up.
And then that goes out.
Well, actually, it's like
It's a
right
pretty cool
here.
trail.
Right there. Okay, yeah.
Straight up this hill. But this way, it makes it a little more gradual.
What's the dashed line? Is that the town border? The black line?
That's level 3's
Mm.
property.
No way, because we wouldn't be building on level.
No.
It's just, is it a,
I know. I'm just wondering what it isn't that important. Not enough to hold us up.
It may be like the parcel lines
Yeah,
from
yeah,
the
that's
different development properties, that are just kind of there on the.
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah. This honestly never hit incredibly high on our list. This has always been a pro stack driven trail. This was kind of always number one on when they would rank things in the past. So, Allison, I think what might be a good answer is let's do the rankings and we'll find out next month whether we still.
Did you need a decision?
Yeah, do you need a
before that?
decision before then?
I don't know I didn't think that this was an urgent question, but I think because it was in the expedited trail plan
Mhm.
ranking, that, work or more design work or maybe to get started. I'm not sure exactly what the purpose behind the question was, just that
Okay.
I know that I think ProStack is still interested in this.
So I think from my perspective on it, just, the steep trail is what the extreme bikers want to use, right? But this thought of putting there was to help the regular folks get out into Coyote Ridge at a more gradual pace. I mean,
Straight up and down is not sustainable at all, especially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
ProStack's always biggest
Yeah.
concern is that what's there isn't sustainable.
and then I think the other part of making the trail, one of the things we've tried to do out in Coyote Ridge in particular too, and just some of the education we've done with Ashley, this coming year, is for people to stay on the trails and not erode the other parts. So I think that's what makes it be important of having of people getting in for access, and then sort of saying to people, stay on the trails and not the social trails. But I think it's always been a higher pro stack, but I understand their ranking of
Yeah.
it, of why, because it helps the Yarrow neighborhoods get out from that top. I know there's a connection down at the bottom, but, again, you have to go down to, there's some connection out in that, from that other part of the neighborhood, down a bit somewhere, but, part of trying to delineate trails is that, people go and make their own if they don't have them, so that.
It was, although, in the top 6.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It was in there.
Yeah, honestly, I think because ProStack had it rated so high, I think it was like number 2 or number 3 last year.
Yeah.
So I would say it's safe to say there's still general interest, but there's probably even greater interest on the ProStack side.
Yeah.
Okay. So cutting back down and across. So the ones we have remaining are number 5 and number 12. So number 5 is a big sweeping one that would come from the Colton Trailhead and shoot all the way down and across. And number 12 would kind of start at Indiana and give a connection up into this. One thing that should be noted is Boulder County actually came and presented to us roughly a year or so ago and said that to make any changes here, to do anything out here, they need to update their Marshall.
Is that Marshall, or is
management
that even the southern grasslands? That's not even
They're
created
all
yet?
combined into one big management plan. So,
But
none-
basically, they were like, "Don't come see us for a while."
yeah, they said these are not in our management plan. Maybe we'll update our management plan in the future. Until then,
3 to 5 years in the future.
Yeah.
It was kind of like.
Well, I asked that very question about the Colton Trail. That's kind of a washed out road.
Yep, that's
to
right.
Boulder County in, I think it was mid-March, and they said nothing gets done in Boulder County without a revision usage. This one is not scheduled. They're currently working on Heil Valley Ranch, which is north of Boulder.
Yep.
They said this one maybe 3 to 5 years should be revisited. So that 3 to 5 years has pushed out another however many years or less since we got that answer.
Yep. So basically, no matter how high we rank these, it's not on Superior land, it's on Boulder land, and they've told us we're not doing anything for quite a while. So rank that.
Well, and it's also a trail to nowhere.
Yeah.
There's no trail connection on the road up there. Not at Colton, but on the other side.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not sure.
Colton comes back into High Plains.
Yeah,
it's
but
further west.
yeah,
Way
it's-
further west. That's like at the bottom of the, kind of driving over in the bottom of that dip.
Yeah.
Then there's no trail anywhere from there.
Yeah.
Was
Unless-
that put on the list when we were talking about potential connections with
Rocky Flats.
Rocky
Flats?
Yeah.
We were talking about punching under the highway there at one point.
I still
But that
thought
was
that,
further up.
yeah, I'm pretty sure the punch was still further up, like pretty much where the Colton Trail hits 128 is, that was my understanding. For
Yeah,
where-
I mean, I think the thing for this one is it is one that is always brought up by people want that access, but I just don't think Boulder County is anywhere near
Yeah.
doing anything about it. So
Yep.
it's, in some respects, for me, it's kind of a waste of a rank. If we know they're not going to touch it for so long, we should go after the things that have a chance of succeeding.
Yeah.
Although I never thought the Mayhopper Trail would get built either.
Yeah, no, it gets built eventually, but.
So that's basically all the trails then. And on top of that, Ryan has pulled together, let's go back one more. Keep going. Here we go. The OSAC continuity document, and this is the most recent update. So it has our most up-to-date stuff. So beyond the history we just went through, it also has all this information. The numbers don't match. There are letters on this, so you have to figure out what corresponds with what. But we'll send this out to everybody, and it's got.
Thank you for your work on that. Remember?
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Yeah, this is this is a very awesome document. So we'll make sure everyone has that.
So there's some updates we maybe should make. I'll try to get those done maybe by the weekend, and so I can get out an update. I mean, I have some notes here from everything we've discussed tonight. But even if I don't, this will be better than nothing.
Yeah. So.
But it would be nice if we could get those future trail maps. We discussed we don't like numbers because it implies a rank, and that's why we went to letters, to letters in our continuity doc. So I don't know if that's something we could discuss next year when they put together that map.
Well, we have one GIS person for the town, and with two committees working on the same thing, having different having two maps, one with letters, one with numbers.
No, we're saying both committees switching over.
We'd like to propose using letters if we could for next year.
Oh, you already talked to ProStaff?
No, but we're just saying we should. We
Oh.
should see if we can get them to agree with
Yeah,
it.
it wouldn't be a problem. My concern would just be,
Working with you, yeah.
yeah, having it easy across the board for everybody, kind of keeping the same document for everybody.
Agreed.
to go off
So
of.
Peter Bottomley also reached out, and this is generally the time where we kind of have the leadership meeting between the ProStack and OSAC chair and vice chair. After we do these rankings, we'll do that again. That way we can just kind of discuss what the rankings look like, see if there's any shared stuff we'd like to do or anything else. And I think this kind of falls into the both rankings and anything else. So we'll talk about what needs to be removed for next year and see if we can get an updated map for next year. So again, I will send out the spreadsheet to everybody along with the map that we just looked at. If you can get that submitted to me by our next meeting, that way we can talk about it. I think we'll be good. Any questions before we finish this agenda item? Excellent. So we'll try to get through our updates and look aheads as quick as possible. Arbor Day. Trish, Sarah, you guys have anything you want to just how it went?
It went great. I think it went really well. I really liked the video, and I'm excited that we'll be showing that because there were, you try not to be too confrontational with citizens, but there was a number of people who mentioned, oh, well, my dog does it, out of my sight. And so I think the video will help with, we had the poster there, which was good, and they liked the swag, but that will help with why it's not good that your dog goes off and does it out of your sight because of what happened. So
it was the first event that I had been to, I guess, on this side of things, and it was really interesting to see how many people knew about these different properties and were really interested and had things to say.
Excellent.
And they liked the little poop bags that we handed out.
Nice.
I can honestly say it was a first for me to work on a dog waste commercial.
So I haven't seen that. Can you send out where that's located or how to see that?
I've got the link somewhere. I can shoot it out to everybody.
And it was in the newsletter.
It was in the newsletter.
Okay, I missed it.
Newsletters already. Yeah.
But
Okay.
Totally, I can send you the link.
That'd be great. Thanks.
It's a great video.
Boulder County Open Space Tour. Did people had to sign up already, right?
I'm going.
Anyone else joining?
Allison, you were going to check for me? Am I on it? Yep, so I'm going. Yep.
Oh,
Excellent.
cool.
When,
two.
that's the end of this month, right?
20th, right? It's next Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
From 9 to 1.
9
An
to 1.
optional lunch at left hand.
I am so there.
Yeah.
Is that after
optional
one,
liquid
or-
lunch.
Yeah,
All right. The Great Spirit Cleanup. Thank you to Ryan and Joel for helping pass out the bags. That was very, very helpful. We ended up having 25 different parties pledge to do the cleanup. We then sent out a survey to see how well people did. Out of those 25, 9 parties responded to it. within that 9-party group, we had 34 people total, and they had over 100 pounds of dog waste and garbage between all of them that got picked up. I would venture that there's even more, and people just didn't respond to the survey.
16 that didn't respond, and we had 2 big bags that we picked up between McCaslin and Pitkin, basically on the north side of Colton.
Nice. So
I saw people out doing it, so
Yep.
with their bags and whatnot. So
we didn't get great weather for that day. I mean, it turned
Mhm.
out kind of cool and windy in the afternoon. So, I mean, I think there's potential there. With a nicer weather day, I think it could be even better.
absolutely, and we did get some comments about how we can make it better. So what I'm going to do is I've been getting responses in both my emails and kind of in the survey I sent out. So I'll going to bring it all together into a single spreadsheet and shoot it out to everybody just so everyone can see it. And Allison, I think I've forwarded you all the, actually no, did not forward Ryan's pictures. But you got all the Boy Scout pictures, I believe.
Yeah, and it would be really great if you could send those to me tomorrow. And maybe write a little blurb, and then maybe I can pop that into the Pros newsletter for like a thank you to everybody who participated and show some of the pictures.
Nice.
If I can get it soon enough, that goes out usually on this Friday.
I can do it tomorrow.
Thanks.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me is I picked up way more trash than dog poop. There actually wasn't that much dog poop that we found that was stray, but there was a lot of trash. I mean, we picked up behind Safeway, and that area just is pretty littered right there by that reservoir. And
I had the same experience. Looked like windblown trash to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because every Monday, at least that's when my trash is picked up, it seems that we have swirling winds.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the biggest areas we've heard complaints about the dog waste was Coyote Ridge area. And that was where the scouts were looking for where to go. I sent them up there. So they did a lot of picking up. I don't know how much of it was dog waste. I don't remember. But
I did get pictures from the scouts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So successful, and we can make it better next year. So excellent.
yeah, good job.
National Parks Trust Kids to Parks Day. Mouthful.
So just so it's on the group's radar, the mayor made a proclamation for that day, and we're having National Trails Day soon after that, and then the weekend after National Trails Day, Cultural Arts Places and Spaces Committee is going to be doing their Party in the Parks.
Yep.
So I felt like we have it well covered, but just so the group was aware that that proclamation had been made.
Yep. And the CAPS committee did give me some small flyers that we can hand out to advertise their parties in the parks at National Trails Day. And we said that'd be fine. So we'll just have that on one of the tables. The next thing was the Coal Creek Crossing Trail. We kind of talked about it already tonight. The Boulder County POSAC Committee, so Parks Open Space Advisory Committee, is going to be discussing it on May 25th at 6:30. The County Board of Commissioners is going to discuss it on May 30th at 11 a.m. Staff's going to have a presence at those to discuss. So if anybody's interested in attending or watching, that's when those are happening. Jeff and Paige concert. We are once again using Sweet Cow for that event. Mark, thanks for helping get that decision made, and Allison, thanks for booking it.
Also, I don't know if the committee thought of this or not, but I talked to the vendor because I was concerned that the parking lot is so far away from the stage. And if the ice cream is way out here in the parking lot, and it's really, I just kept Sean's same exact plan that he had set up with Sweet Cow. And so I'm going to try to meet with her and measure her axles of her truck. They have like 2 different trucks to try to get them close to the
venue.
Yeah, because if you had to leave the music to go to get the ice cream way in the parking lot, I mean, it's quite a hike.
Yeah,
and then the edges of the park aren't really good to go down or up because they're pretty steep. So anyway, just so you know that I'm
Awesome.
I'm
Is
gonna
it
try to meet
possible
with
to
her.
park on Torrey's, and is that closer?
It's steep and it's across the park this way.
Yeah.
So it's either, yeah, so.
Yep. Perfect. The committee open house that happened a few weeks ago. I was there to represent OSAC. Nobody showed up. So we still have an opening. So continue to plug us whenever you can, so we can hopefully get a full committee again. The Rocky Mountain Greenway / Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge. I don't know, again, if anybody...
So I've got a small update. Sean and I traded a couple emails about this earlier this month, but there is a public speaking session that's in Arvada on Monday, May 15th, so next Monday, 6:30 to 8:30, that I'm going to go attend just to see if there's any new information, kind of get a pulse of what the sentiment is going to be. I'm also going to reach out to Sandy Pennington to see if she knows anything. She often seems to have information that isn't widely available. So next meeting I'll have an update to see what she has to say about current progress, direction, things like that.
And on top of that, she received some documents from, I think, the person who leads the group of the municipalities and whatnot. I can forward. She sent that to me. I forgot to forward that to you. I'll forward that over.
Great. Yeah, that'd be good.
And I also saw that we can get on a listserv for that same group, so we get updates on minutes, agendas, that sort of thing. I've got that information I can send to you as well.
Okay.
Beyond that, at the board's meeting on Monday night, there was a presentation from a environmental lawyer who was trying to convince the town to join into a lawsuit against, I believe it was the Fish and Wildlife Commission who was ended up against, and that it was basically due to a NEPA violation. I'm forgetting what that stands for. National Environmental Policy Act violation. His contention was that there was not a environmental impact study done, and that there should have been. Thus, there's a violation of the law. My understanding is the board will probably talk about this at the next meeting, whether they want to join the lawsuit or not. Maybe.
I don't know if the board's going to talk about it at the next meeting.
Oh. It happened. It was a presentation.
Yeah.
There we go. You can find it easily if you go in and watch the video. I think it was about 15, 20 minutes. Next, any updates from Leeds? So Joel just talked about Rocky Mountain Greenway, open space acquisition plan we've been talking about already tonight. Shan Trailhead.
So the designer is still doing that piece, right? And we haven't heard back from them yet. They haven't completed yet the
Right.
town.
So, yeah,
did, sorry.
I've been working with a designer to come up with a couple of concepts. They are not ready yet. Hopefully they'll be ready soon, but there isn't a huge hurry because the property, the demolition can't take place until August 30th. So we have time to explore it and see how it goes. But as soon as I have more information, you'll have more information.
Yep. And then I know, Sean, you sent me some stuff, so I figure that's going to kick up probably after Trails Day. So
perfect
for things that we want to look at.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay. Next meeting with Broomfield's Open Space Committee. Allison, do you have any updates on that?
Yeah, so the group's very interested in meeting, hopefully either in August or September. They meet on the fourth Thursday. So the dates are our date the 9th, their date the 24th of August, our date the 13th, their date the 28th of September. So if the group wanted to look at their calendars, shoot an email or...
If we get someone to go to COSA it might be nice to do the 28th, because then we might have something also to discuss too, but I don't know, I'm just,
That's
that would be
worthwhile.
after that date,
And we could meet here,
or we can meet there.
or we could meet there. So
Road
it's
trip.
up to the group.
Okay, those are nice dates.
How about, can you send those dates out in an email? We can all see if we have any exact conflicts
Yeah.
with those dates and try to narrow it from there.
Mhm.
Awesome. And then the last thing was the Tract H in downtown Superior, which we already discussed. So we are done with what we had on the agenda. One more.
I have one thing. We have 3 members whose terms are ending next month. And if you'd like to be considered for another term, just say yes or no, and I'll call out your name. Andy,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and Sean.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
All right. Does anybody have anything else? Questions, comments, anything for the good of the order? We are adjourned.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
We made up for a short meeting last time.
I was gonna say, last time we were early this time.
No, that was.
It was really helpful for me to hear you talk through the different trails before we go.
We haven't done that in the
This
past.
is
We,
yeah.
yeah. That was where the continuity.
Today.
Last year, you sitting in the seat at this exact meeting last year, so I had no clue what, the trails, so it really helped me, I think, this document. If you have questions about it, reach out. Yeah, my pleasure. That's how I got to learn.
So which one? Are you asking which ones they were? Oh, just where it reminds me.
Oh, were they winning? Oh, that's right, tonight's Wednesday.
Tonight's Wednesday, yeah.
Oh, man, they were over the last one.
Oh, they need to pull it together.
Well, yeah.
Bye. Nice to see you guys.
Talk, but then it's
Yeah.
just a walk now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like- Yeah, the Wizards are really good team. Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's the home advantage, right? It's Silver's home usually crushes the other one.
Yeah, I know. And then just the exhausted,
That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, they won, nice. My husband will be happy.
They crush you too. It's like voting, it's like,
Yeah.
well, we know what's gonna happen when they go back, so.
Well, at least they both went for it.
Yeah, well, exactly, yeah.
So hopefully.
At least 2 more games.
Yeah.
No, well, at least 1 more.
Yeah. And the thing that stinks is the Cavaliers have been sitting and resting.
And, you know, I'm just expecting the Cavs, and it's like, well, we were just toying with,
Well, thanks, guys. I'm good.
That's good.
Working. You know, just working.
Thanks, Mark.
Just working.
Just working.
So, we can meet next week, I've got lots of free time, so I can work, I have time to work with you guys, getting together. Okay.
On that 25, Graham, Denver.
What is it? What are you talking about?
The company that organizes this electronic sign that's out on I-25
Uh-huh.
in downtown Denver, is thinking maybe the week before the National Trails Day, one day, maybe a little blurb up there.
Nice.
To promote it, so I'll find out if I can, he said if I can maybe shoot you an email.
That's
I'll let you know
cool.
the parameters on what kind of fonts or this and that they use for the best kind of visibility on the sign.
Okay.
I mean, just because simple, I mean, I probably could put something together as a proposal and see what you think.
That's cool. I mean, that sounds neat. I don't know if I would even have to get permission. I can ask my director and see like how that works, because we haven't had that opportunity before.
Yeah, no, because, yeah, kind of saying that would probably drive traffic. You know, I don't know, maybe it would be too much. People are like, oh, all of a sudden everybody's piling into Trails Day.
It might be really cool, though.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's a really neat idea. I mean, it can't hurt to ask,
I'll
you
find
know,
out from the company, too.
find
See,
out the
I think that
information.
they're really into like, you know, all this kind of nature park stuff, so I think they'd be all for it.
That sounds cool.
Cool, all right, well, thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thanks, you too.